Have you ever explained something you thought was perfectly clear, only to be met with blank stares? Or maybe you've had an idea that seemed obvious to you, but when you shared it, people looked at you like you were speaking a different language? Yeah, if you're a smart person, you've probably felt misunderstood more times than you can count. And here's the thing, it's not because people are stupid, and it's not because you're bad at communicating. It's something completely different. So let me ask you, have you ever felt lonely in a room full of people? Not physically alone, but mentally? Like nobody really gets what you're saying? Because here's what nobody tells you. When you're intelligent, your brain processes information fundamentally differently than most people. And that creates a gap. Not because you're better or worse, but because you're operating on a different wavelength. In this video, I'm going to show you the 3 core reasons why smart people feel misunderstood and how to bridge that gap without dumbing yourself down. And stay until the end, because the last part, that's where I'll show you how to be fully yourself and be understood. You don't have to choose. Okay, before we dive in, we need to talk about something most people don't understand about intelligence. Intelligence isn't just about IQ scores. It's about how your brain processes information, how you see patterns, how you connect ideas. Think of it like this. Imagine most people are watching a movie at normal speed, but your brain? It's watching at 1.5x, and you're seeing the director's commentary, the behind-the-scenes footage, and predicting the next 3 plot twists. So when you jump in and say, wait, but what about X, Y, and Z? Everyone looks confused. Not because your points aren't valid, but because they're still on step 1 and you're already at step 10. And here's the trap. When you try to explain, you have to backtrack so much that by the time you're done, the conversation has moved on. So you learn to just not say anything, or you oversimplify until your actual insight gets lost. And either way, you feel misunderstood. I want to be real with you. For most of my life, I felt isolated. Not because I didn't have people around me, but because I felt like I was always explaining, always translating, always watering down my thoughts. And I started to think something was wrong with me, like maybe I'm just overthinking everything and confusing people. It took me years to realize I wasn't the problem. The communication gap was real, but it wasn't about superiority. It was about understanding difference. And once I learned to bridge that gap, everything changed. Reason number 1, and this is the biggest one. Smart people think in systems. You don't just see the steps, you see how everything connects, the patterns, the whole picture all at once. But most people think in steps, linear, sequential. A leads to B, B leads to C. Here's what this looks like. You're in a meeting, someone proposes an idea. While they're explaining step 1, your brain has already mapped out the entire implementation, identified 3 problems, and come up with alternatives. So when you jump in and say, wait, but what about X, Y, and Z? Everyone looks confused. Not because your points aren't valid, but because they're still on step 1 and you're already at step 10. And here's the trap. When you try to explain, you have to backtrack so much that by the time you're done, the conversation has moved on. So you learn to just not say anything, or you oversimplify until your actual insight gets lost. And either way, you feel misunderstood. Reason number 2, intelligent people see nuance. You see the gray areas, the exceptions, the context. You understand that most things aren't simply right or wrong. They're complicated. But most people prefer black and white thinking, not because they're incapable of nuance, but because it's cognitively easier, simpler, faster. So here's what happens. Someone makes a strong, clear statement, and your brain immediately goes, well, that's mostly true, but what about this context and this exception? And when you bring that up, people think you're disagreeing. They think you're being difficult or contrarian. But you're not disagreeing, you're adding nuance. But to someone who thinks in black and white, nuance feels like opposition. Classic example. Someone says, working hard is the key to success. And you say, well, it depends. Hard work matters, but so does timing and luck and working on the right things. To you, that's more complete. But to them, it sounds like you're saying hard work doesn't matter. And over time, you learn to just nod along with oversimplifications. Because bringing up nuance makes you the difficult one. And that isolation from your own thoughts, that's what misunderstood really feels like. And reason number 3. This is the one that took me the longest. When smart people communicate, they're often communicating to exchange ideas, to explore, to solve problems. The content is the point. But most people communicate primarily to connect, to build rapport, to share feelings. The relationship is the point. Here's what it looks like. A friend says, "I'm so frustrated with my job. My boss never listens to my ideas." And you immediately go into solution mode. You say, "Have you tried scheduling a one-on-one? Or framing your ideas in terms of the boss's goals?" Good advice, right? But your friend looks deflated because they weren't looking for solutions. They wanted validation. They wanted you to say, "That sucks. Your boss should listen to you." And this pattern repeats. You think you're being helpful. They think you're being cold. And the really painful part? You start to feel like your intelligence is a barrier to connection, like you have to choose between being smart and being liked. But you don't, and I'm going to show you how. So now you know the 3 core reasons. You think in systems while others think in steps. You see nuance while others see black and white, and you communicate to exchange ideas while others communicate to connect. And here's what you need to understand. None of these are problems. The way you think isn't a flaw, it's a difference, and differences can be bridged. You don't have to dumb yourself down. You just need to learn how to translate, how to meet people where they are while still being fully yourself. So, how do you actually do this? Here's what worked for me. Your brain thinks in complete systems. The solution isn't to stop doing that. It's to learn how to unpack your system into sequential steps. Before you share a complex idea, ask yourself, what's step 1? Then share that step. Only that step. Wait for understanding. Then step 2. You're giving them the same destination, just a path they can actually follow. For the nuance problem, here's the key. People need to feel heard before they can hear you. So instead of immediately jumping to exceptions, start by acknowledging what's true in what they said. Then add your nuance. Instead of, "Well, actually, it's more complicated," try, "Yeah, that's definitely a big part of it. I've also noticed." You're still bringing the nuance, you're just not leading with it. And that tiny shift, it changes everything. And for the ideas versus connection problem, here's the game changer. Just ask. When someone comes to you with a problem, before you jump into solution mode, ask, "Do you want me to just listen, or do you want my thoughts on what you could do?" That's it. One question. And it completely eliminates the disconnect. And here's the beautiful part. Often after you listen first, they'll then ask for your ideas. Because you gave them what they needed emotionally, now they're open to what you have to offer intellectually. Look, I want to leave you with something important. Being a smart person in a world that doesn't always think the way you do, it can feel lonely. It can feel like you have to constantly translate yourself just to fit in. But you don't have to choose between being understood and being yourself. You just have to learn the language of translation. Not dumbing down, translating. The world needs how you think. Your ability to see systems, to see nuance, to think deeply, that's not a burden. That's a gift. And the people who matter, they want to understand you. You just have to give them a way in. If this video helped you feel less alone, hit that subscribe button, because I make content for people who think deeply. And drop a comment. Which of the 3 reasons resonated most with you? You're not alone in this. You're not broken. You're just speaking a language that needs translation. And now, you know how.